Hi everyone, it's Jody Robinson. I just wanted to do a quick little video to kind of talk a little bit about my two new stencils. This one is called Dot and Dash Blocks. So the main thing that this one does is create block designs. And then the second one is this one, and it's called Dot and Dash Borders. So like the blocks, again, it's intended to create borders. Can you create other things with both of them? Of course you can. And I just got these to actually play with, and oh my gosh, you know, I designed it just, main thing for me was that I wanted these stencils to have different just reference points, dots and dashes, as you can see. So let me start with the block one, right? So this is the block. It's 10 inches square. So you can mark this if you have, you know, and it's not only for a 10-inch block. Let's say you have a block that's 8 inches. Because I had these go up in increments and out, you know, equally, that way if you have an 8-inch block, this will work for that. Or a 6, you know, obviously you're going to lose some of the markings, but it will work. If you had a larger block, you can still use this. You could simply center this in, create the design, and either just draw it out to the edges of your larger block, or maybe you just add something different around the outside edge. So let me show you what that looks like marked. And that would be this. So you can see that's a 10-inch square, fits in there. And then what happened was I had still part of the stencil where something could fit. So I went ahead and did this. Of course you could. This is 5-inch, 5-inch with the two, it's 10. So it's 5 by 10. You can mark it twice like this to get a different block kind of layout. You have the points and lines are in different places. So it kind of gives you, essentially to me, this would be something that's more, it's going to be a little tighter in the quilting because you're filling, you know, spaces. The cool thing about this is you could also mark it once, of course. Maybe you have a narrow border and you want to use these to do that. So let me just, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and slide this stencil under here so you kind of understand what I mean when I'm saying about, if I can get it under here. So I like to use stencils. Generally, I'm not using the lines. Like, I'm not using this. You could obviously use it to stitch exactly that, which that's fine. But what I like to do is have, use different points where, what I mean by that is like the corners. So I have all of these points. The other thing that drives me crazy sometimes with certain stencils is when you're aiming for, I want to stitch up to the point, and sometimes a stencil will have like where one line comes up and the other one overlaps. So you really have to be, you know, paying attention to make sure that you stop in the right place. So I had them be little circles. It just alleviates that. I know exactly that that is the point. That's where I'm going. And if you notice, I tried to keep it from getting too terribly busy. Sometimes, I mean, if you mark this whole thing, you may not even use the whole thing. But I wanted these things to be there to fit anything that I might want to do. And what I mean by that, so we also have, before we draw anything here, these radiating lines. So these ones are little dots. So because maybe you only want to stitch the main ones, divide this into 8. But if you want to divide it again, you have those lines to do radiating lines. Maybe you don't want to stitch any of the lines, and instead you want to use these little areas as a place to fill with some other design, more as a boundary. See what I mean? So let's say you're not a ruler fan. You don't want to stitch all of these lines. This will work for you as well. Like I could mark this in a block and simply say, you know what, I think I'm going to put, I don't know, feathers in here. I have this little V that I can fill. So probably, you know, you could kind of start along the outside. You could just add whatever it is, feathers. I would do both sides at once. Whatever kind of feathers you want to do, because we have this line, of course, and it could be any kind of design you want. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put in my little top. And then I'd go down and stitch the spine, because now I can move across and come into this next one and do the same thing. Or maybe I only want to do these two and these two and put, I don't know what, maybe a fill or something in here. So that would be one way to not actually even stitch the lines and more just use it as a boundary. And you'll notice, so the lines, the little dots, I'm sorry, here, you know, maybe you do want to stitch this. Any of these lines you pick. And then, you know, I like to use the points a lot of times to do this. And you could just do, you know, that. Those points are there whether you use them or not. And you could do that the whole way around. So I hope that makes sense, that you kind of have all of these different points to use. Maybe you want to do something like a, create some kind of a star. Well, that's easy, because if you start right here, if you just want 4, and of course we could be using a curved ruler even, you know, if you wanted to go up to here, and then I just usually will make sure I know where I'm going here, curve down to here, and then we can do another one. And you can alter this stuff, because, and usually what I'll do is grab my like regular school chalk marking thing and just give myself like maybe an extra little, you know, tick mark on there so I remember which one I'm going to. You know, there's so many options. Maybe you want to do, you know, maybe you want to use a curved ruler and make each of these sections, you stitch these sections, make them be rounded at the top. They're just, I hope it makes sense. I'm really excited about this, because even once you, let's say we did do that. Let's say we just stitched something like this. And then I probably would do something in here. But now you can grow from this. So maybe you decide you want to grab a curved ruler and give yourself kind of a little peak here. Then I like to add layers to things. So I might come back in now and actually stitch these lines. And then of course I would do a fill here just so I could travel to get to the next part up here, and stitch this line and this line, would have done the other one, and then fill. So you can add these layers of, you know, within here. You could even come down into this part and add a center. This one goes like this, and you continue on. Or maybe you want to go, you have these points up here, maybe you want to stitch like that and divide it up even more. I think, so my suggestion would be, if you get this stencil, I would take a photo, lay it down, and this orange isn't ideal, but it's what the color mat I have in this room. But I would lay it down on a piece of black fabric, take a picture of it, and then if you have, you know, you can either put it onto your computer, if you have whatever you have that's a has like a pencil that you can draw, like on a tablet, and you can doodle. Or you could also, you know, lay this down, mark it out, and make copies of it with paper to doodle before you start. And so that's kind of the blocks. I hope that all makes sense. And then we have this Dot Dash Borders stencil. So with this, it's 8 inches this way by 16. So if you flip it, and I had no intentions of this. It wasn't until I actually started to play around with the stencil. You can mark this like this, then flip it and mark it that way, and you get this 16 by 16 awesome like center medallion thing. Or maybe you have a giant 16 by 16 block. Same basic ideas. So on this one, we have, oh, let me show you what it looks like just marked first. Can you tell I wasn't really prepared for all this? Sorry. Okay, so this is what it looks like marked. And what I wanted you to see, sorry for the wrinkly fabric. So that's one unit, and I did just a little bit of a second unit so that you can see what happens here. So it creates this kind of point, well, depending on what you stitch, because I don't know that you're going to want to stitch the curve, but if you did. So you could mark this straight in repetition, or, you know, if you have a nice long border, you might want to mark it this way multiple times, and then come back and flip it and mark it across the top, so they would kind of alternate. One other quick thing about this one. So let's say, I mean, this is 8 inches, but, you know, every border is a different size, of course. So what I wanted to make sure was that if I had a border, how big is this? Probably 6? Yeah. That was only 6 inches. You can still use this. So your options would be, depending on what parts or lines of the stencil you want to use to create your border, you might line it at the top. So everything that you see from here up, you still have all of those lines to work with to create your border. Or you could do the opposite. You might want to line it up this way. So of course, then we have everything that's here. If you decided to do, let's just say you were going to do these radiating lines, for an example. So they would just stop there, right? That's still going to work. Obviously, you could stitch this part, but you're not going to be able to do that. But that's okay. You know, you may not even be using those. Now, on this stencil, instead of having actual lines, because maybe you want to divide this up more, I just have these dots, and they're on the radiating additional divisions spaced at 1 inch, so that you have those for whatever. You can see this circle, so these dots are also create different additional circles, so you have that option. Although if it were me, I probably would lay a template down and just mark it before I started, just because I like to do that. And again, I mean, I just tried to put as many different lines in here as I could. Basic lines and dots and points that you might use to maybe connect or whatever to create some blocks. The reasoning I have this down here, I have a circle and kind of a triangle on point square. For me, if I were going to do radiating lines, which I do plan to do quite a bit of in the future, I don't like when they all come down here to the point. Sure, I mean, you can do that if you want to. I personally find that it gets a little too much happening down here. There's a lot of thread buildup. So I usually will, you know, I want to have an option. So if I were to stitch this in, then I can do my radiating lines coming off of this. And it just gives me a nice place to travel to do the next one instead of it all coming down. Same thing with the circle. And if you go over to my store, the listing, I put some stitched photos that you can see. There's one medallion there that I did with this border. It came out really pretty. Okay, but back to, again, so the main thing with this circle and this diamond or triangle shape was that, I was thinking, let's say, what if you had a really big border that this is way too small? Then it would still be good. Maybe you did a border that was kind of like this giant scalloped based thing, whether you echo with the other line or not. And then whatever's going to happen in here. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you do something like this. I don't know. Oh. Oh. Jeez. Blocking my vision. So whatever happens, now let's pretend that the border is actually up to this dotted line. It would be okay because now I could just do something back here, whether it's a fill or some other additional design. Maybe it's just something that's like this to really show it off. Something like straight lines. And then those would have obviously just carry up as far as it needed to. And then, I mean, it's the same as the block with, where these different things are. So you have all kind of points to work with. You could do, of course, I automatically go to lines because I like them, but it could be curved too. So I hope that all makes sense. I mean, I know it does to me, but I made it because I made it to be what I wanted it to be. So if you look at this, I hope that you can see what I mean by these different reference lines and points that you have to work with. I mean, you could even do something like this because we have these lines. I think it's really endless. I'm kind of super excited to see what someone else will do with it. Because I think we all see different things looking at the same base. So I'm kind of excited. So I hope that all makes sense. And again, you could, if you buy the stencil, you could always take a picture of it. So you can doodle ahead of time because I think there's just so many options. Okay. Hope that explained it a little bit, and I will see you. Bye.